Hello, hello, hello. Audience, thank you so much for joining us once again at this event with Modern Sales Pros. I love having you all here, audience, and I want to hear from you today. So go on the chat and tell us where you're calling from. My name is Eduardo. I am a community events manager at Modern Sales Pros, and I'm happy to be your host here today. I have those three amazing speakers. I'm not a speaker that will tell you everything about how to unlock customer growth, data-driven strategies for expansion and revenue. As I mentioned, I work for Modern Sales Pros, and today's event is brought to you by my team. And for those of you not familiar with MSP, we are the world's largest and highest quality community for those in sales management, sales leadership, sales and revenue operations, and sales enablement, aka our Modern Sales Pros. And we also work with customer success pros. And that's why you're here today to hear about the customer success pros. And our mission is always to create an environment for our members to answer the toughest questions out there. We have a community of over 35K people. So with that amount of people helping you, I am pretty sure you will have no questions left unanswered and no problems left unsolved. And we help you, the community, through a robust online forum. We have quarterly summits. We just finished one last week, and we are planning our next one for October. And we're starting to get back into in-person events. We have an amazing happy hour at Dreamforce coming up. So if you're not a member yet, you will be invited to join right after this event, and then you will be able to see all the things that we have scheduled. But that's enough about other events in MSP. Let's focus on how to get the most out of this one. This event is being recorded, so all the knowledge that these speakers will drop at you today, you will be able to access right after this event. And I was talking with them backstage. It's Wednesday. They're feeling a little bit tired, end of the quarter, and they were like, a thing that will make me really happy today is to answer questions from the audience. So audience, use the chat functionality, ask them questions, and also use the Q&A. Put all your questions there, and we will make sure that we get to your questions at the end of this panel. The best thing about MSP is that we work with amazing partners. And today we have Catalyst here sponsoring this event. We love having Catalyst as a partner. And I have Mark here from Catalyst. Mark, can you introduce yourself to us? Tell us a little bit about Catalyst.
Yeah, thanks, Eduardo. So my name is Mark Cosaglo. I'm the CRO at Catalyst. Catalyst is a customer growth platform that helps you expand, renew, and get more value out of your customers so that they can become an engine for your growth. Right now, it's super tough. Top of funnel investment is not having the same returns they have over years. So the only place you can turn for real viable growth options is your customer base, and Catalyst is there to help you figure out how to do that.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us, Mark, and thank you, Catalyst, for sponsoring this event. And then we invited Jackie and Taylor to come here today and tell us everything that they know about customer growth. So, Jackie, would you introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. I work for a company called Speckit, which is a just-in-time learning platform that gives you bite-sized knowledge in your flow of work and helps enable your teams. But very excited to be here.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us. And Taylor.
Hi, everyone. So excited to be here. So I lead our global customer success team at Comply, which is a company focused on delivering compliance and regulatory software and consulting solutions to global financial firms.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. Mark, you're going to be our moderator for today. I'm going to pass the mic to you. You can take it from here. Let me turn off my slides. I'm going to be listening backstage and taking a lot of notes on all the knowledge that you're going to drop on us today. But have fun. Let's start this conversation.
Yep. Thanks, Eduardo. All right. Hey, so thanks everybody for showing up today. We really appreciate it. Taylor, Jackie, and I have spent some time getting ready. I don't know if I've ever come into a webinar, you two, with as many notes about what people wanted to talk about before. Like Eduardo, hats off, like for capturing all that goodness that we've been doing. But I want to start things off with Taylor. Taylor, I think, had some very interesting observations around identifying expansion opportunities. And as we all know right now, expansion drives NRR. and NRR has become this North Star metric that everyone's using to judge our businesses. And so you've been the global VP of CS at great companies like SalesLoft and now Comply. Like, how are you driving expansion in this market where customers feel more likely to churn than to grow?
Yeah, so I am particularly excited about this topic because I think this moment of where we're at presents such a great opportunity for us as customer experience leaders. So, I mentioned my role. Part of that remit is true customer success. Another part of that is renewals. What's not included in that is account management or expansion, but that does not mean that that's not part of my responsibility as a leader to be thinking about that and to help drive growth back to the business. So a few things that I've seen that have worked and that I would encourage leaders to lean into at this moment is, first, get with your sales counterparts right now. They are trying to figure this out too. How are they approaching accounts? What's working? What's resonating? What's not? Let's learn from each other and lean on others internally to get some of those learnings fast, in addition to, of course, continuing to listen to your customers. The second thing I would encourage everyone to do, if you haven't already, is really understand the levers that drive close of expansion opportunities. And what I mean by that is, it's, again, our chance to become true business leaders in this moment. And if you are faced with the challenge of a short amount of time to improve expansion revenue, you should be looking at all of the pipeline deals and understanding the dynamics of the 4 key levers of closing an opportunity: the volume, the velocity, i.e. close speed, the contract size, so what is driving your biggest deals, and what's the win rate. And if you can start to understand those levers, you can start, as a customer leader, to understand which of the offerings and services, products that your company puts out to the market is going to make the most impact in the shortest amount of time. So that's a critical point of this, is what are the levers that are going to help get you to the endpoint that your company is looking to get to. Understand them. And then last one, number 3, focus. Get specific of all that you can offer. What is going to drive the bottom line in the fastest amount of time that you know is a pain point for your customers, that you can then translate into spiffs and enablement for your team, to focus really in on those couple of key areas. I would caution everyone here not to try and learn all the things and expand on all the things. It's easy to get distracted, and it's very difficult to enable teams on a lot in a short amount of time. So get specific, get down to what you know is really going to drive the true impact on the business, and then build some spiffs and enablement around it to make your team successful. And spoiler alert, you do not have to have an enablement team in order to enable your team. I know we are all short on those kinds of resources, but I am telling you, if you can get specific about what you're trying to go after, it makes that process a lot easier as you spread it out across your team.
Love that. And I know, Jackie, I've put out there recently that I think QBRs should be killed. I literally haven't been in a valuable QBR in my entire career with a vendor, so I just don't think that they actually work. But I know you're using internal QBRs to drive expansion. Like, what are some of the tactics that you've identified in those, and how are you using internal QBRs to help grow accounts?
Well, first, for another time, I'd love to debate external QBRs. We've had a lot of success with them recently, but around internal QBRs. So, Taylor, you mentioned really knowing what levers that you have, and one of the biggest themes that we've identified in the past, 6 or 8 months with this shifts in the economy and the changes in buying processes is multi-threading. Has just been such a huge component for us. So we've leveraged internal QBRs. We just wrapped up a week of them where it's everybody that would be involved with accounts invited, which is essentially our company. So our CSMs lead them, but we have leadership support from our CEO, our product team, our sales team, and then we invite the AEs on the accounts as well. And we're really focused on a couple of things. One, we want to understand each account holistically and start mapping out, if we haven't already done, an org chart of who our current champions are, what areas of opportunity do we have, and if they're healthy, how can we double down on that health and go out and expand to other departments. The AEs will leverage kind of that outbound motion, and then the CSMs will leverage the relationships that they already have to make those introductions. And then we use our executive leadership team to make more exec touch points as well. And then within the QBRs too, we're also looking at product usage. And by the way, plug for Catalyst, we created QBR dashboards within Catalyst, so this was very easy for the team to do. But we looked at product usage, and I really believe that expansion is a natural byproduct of healthy usage and success with customers. So we're looking at what customers are using the products the best, and where we might be missing. And so again, coming up with strategies for better product usage, coming up with content strategies, coming up with timelines and roadmaps for these customers, because once we get them in a healthier spot, again, that byproduct should be expansion. So what expansion do we have currently possible with our healthy accounts, and what can we foresee in the future? And then lastly, we have product in those QBRs as well, because we want to understand if there's any gaps within the product that might be holding us back from unlocking future revenue as well.
One of the things I heard you say directly, Taylor, and Jackie, I think that you hit it at, I'd love to really talk about is, Jackie, you're talking about bringing in all these different stakeholders and really being a leader in the business, not someone that's just receiving orders and doing stuff or putting out fires or whatnot. Taylor, I think I heard you say the same thing, that like now is a time for CS professionals to really accelerate forward being real business leaders. I'm just curious, are you guys seeing the same thing? Do you feel that like there's an emptiness right now around the C-suite table that somebody needs to come step into to help lead people through this? Because listen, from my experience, most C-suite people are very knowledgeable about acquisition and new logo, and very unknowledgeable about customers and customer success and expansion. And every board is hammering people on retention and expansion right now. So Jackie, I'll ask you first. Are you seeing that same kind of void? And like, what's the thing or two that you're doing to step into that?
Yeah, I will say that I stepped in as head of CS in late December, early January. I'm super fortunate to work on an exec team that is completely supportive of that retention goal. And so our CEO is completely aligned to it. In the past, I've experienced what you're alluding to, where customer success kind of sits at the bottom of the totem pole in terms of departments, even from like simple company meetings, we're the last ones to present, things like that. And so with the company aligned to our number one OKR, which is retention, C-suite is bought into ensuring that product, sales, and CS are aligned to, retaining the customers that we have. And you mentioned it earlier as well as we kicked off, but a lot of our revenue is actually coming from existing customers. So we're doubling down on that focus. And I've been fortunate enough to work for a CEO who really believes in focusing on the customer right now more than ever. So I haven't had to struggle as much as I've had in the past with getting people involved into the power of CS.
Yeah, I completely agree. We're in a great moment in that customers are now getting a seat at the table in a way that they haven't in the past. So similar to Jackie, I'm fortunate that I work for an organization that has a chief customer officer. There's focus around this. But to your point, Mark, we have focus, but we still haven't all figured it out. I think what has caused some of the historical, where does this land? Do we need an advocate? Is because with new business, it's relatively easier to say, and it is a longer standing institution to say, this is the team that owns this piece of it. But once you get to expansion, we're all working in a bit of gray area here. We've got existing customer relationships. You've got retention maybe owned by one team. You've got growth owned by another team. We've all of a sudden got potentially competing priorities. And so making sure that the very beginning, your leaders are talking about how we align the incentives and get folks excited in the same direction, I think is a key part of it, and start to break down some of the silo of I own this, we are in two separate places. We got to be one team right now. And so what I would say to, your point of filling that gap, the gap I feel is we're a little bit tied to some of the old ways of thinking of accountability and responsibility. We don't have time for that right now. We got to get in there. Every single person has got to step up and say, this expansion piece is so critical. And so what I would tell anyone in a similar position is, yes, there is gray area. It is waiting for you. Step into it and go get the information that you need to make smart choices. Don't wait for finance to send you all the information at the end of the quarter. Go ask the questions now. Don't wait for ops to send you a pipeline report. Go get it now. Go get with them. You can take the lead here. And as long as we've got sort of aligned incentives around it, good things will happen.
I love that. Just be proactive. Like, don't sit around, no excuse. Don't be disempowered. Like, go get the work, do your thing. But at the same time, don't let like roles and responsibilities like artificially constrain you. Like, if you can do it, go do it. And one thing you just said about that earlier, Taylor, was enablement without enablement. I've heard that, piqued my ears. Explain a little bit. Give us some idea what you mean by that.
Yes. So, we all wish we had more resources around this kind of thing, this enablement stuff. And we all know it's important. That doesn't always mean at the end of the day, we have specific teammates set aside to be able to do it. But there are some very small things that you can do to start to set a culture of enablement, and your team being proactive on their own to get that kind of enablement, that you don't have to have a full robust program. I'll give you an example. One of the things that's worked well for us is we set up this summer, we identified an area of expansion that was a pain our customers were telling us about, a service that we offered. Let's go get it. So again, instead of focusing on all the things that we could expand on, we said we're going to do this very targeted campaign. And so from an enablement standpoint, what we did is we set up a very small pitch contest. Said, all right, sales team, how do you do this? How do you enable your reps to do pitches? 90 seconds was all we asked from the team. We gave them a couple of examples. We put a spiff around it. And then we encouraged every single person to listen to each other's pitch videos. So small investment from us as leadership. I just needed a couple of points that we were going to, judge the team on in terms of their pitch. We asked for 90 seconds of their time. I'm sure it probably actually turned into 15 to 30 minutes of their time, but hey, that's good stuff. Small amount of their time. And then the gains that we got from it were exponential. Not only did we learn from them, I learned a ton from our frontline team. Also, they got to learn from each other. And now we are sure that they have all practice. Now they're going to go talk to customers. So small investment, big impact.
Awesome. Jackie, I know a couple things that you put in our notes and had in our discussion was one around striking while the iron's hot with expansion and using onboarding as like, boy, they're never hotter than onboarding. And the other thing that I think that you've suggested that it's a little more controversial that people always want to stay away from is like pilots, how to embrace and use pilots right now. Can you explain those two real tactical areas?
Yeah. So to the first part, one of the most successful times for us to get an expansion is around our go live date. Our go live is about anywhere from 6 to 10 weeks post purchase. And that's really when we have the most momentum with the accounts. So actually on one of the last webinars I spoke on, talked about momentum. And so that could be like right post sale, right when somebody's about to go live. And then you want to keep that momentum up post go live. So different times throughout the customer journey, that could be the renewal, but you really don't want to wait until that moment in time for that to be your next momentum. So what we do prior to go live is just double check with the customer. Like, is there any other teams that would find value in what we've just created and we've just been working on for the last 6 to 8 weeks? Do we have all the licenses that we need? We might be working with, so we are an enablement platform. So we might be working with an AE team, but have we considered the BDRs? And if not, why not? And we start to dig into that a little bit prior to go live. And we talk through, the most successful times that we have launched is when it's really, really sticky within an organization. Throughout our onboarding process too, I also do an exec touch point halfway through and then prior to go live. So I'm staying close to the buyer and making sure that we're ensuring success and tracking towards the results that they're hoping for. And so that's a good time for me to touch base and ask those types of questions. And oftentimes we hear, oh, actually, this was really, really great. We're excited about it. There's a lot of momentum and excitement internally. We actually want to include that BDR team now. We might not have been ready for it when we were first evaluating it at the first sale. So that's a big moment for us. And then to answer the second part of your question, with regards to pilots. Oh gosh, I even hate saying the word out loud, truly. I have a love-hate, and I see a couple of my former team members on the call. I have a big love-hate relationship with pilots, but given the market that we're in, people are really sensitive to budget, and people are sensitive to making too big of a splash internally. And so we have a handful of pilots going on right now, and it's kind of in a similar motion where people are hesitant to buy, hesitant to make this commitment. And so they're testing the waters with the tool prior, because we don't have a trial. So they're testing us prior to really fully rolling us out. And I hate to admit it, but they have been really successful. We've built that momentum. We've basically fulfilled our promise in terms of the customer success relationship, some of the success metrics that have been discussed during the sales process. And once those things, are meeting expectation, we're discussing that next step with the expansion of the pilot. That's also really built up our relationship with our AEs and CSMs, because I think one of the biggest frustrations with pilots, at least from my experience, is that, a pilot is like a deal that's not really sold. And the AE passes it across the finish line and is like, here, CS, go do this thing. You actually really close this deal. But I'll take the expansion revenue for it. And so I think that's where some of the tension has come from in the past. And we've done things to align compensation and then also really ensure that the AE plays an extremely active role in the pilot, because we are not seeing it as a deal fully sold until it either closes, or close wins or close losses at the end of that pilot period.
Love that. Taylor, I know one of the things that we talked about was leaning into risk. And I just read something from Greg Danes, who I think did an awesome data-driven report for his company, Churn RX, that basically said people that submit tickets are have 4 times the customer longevity of people that don't. And so, you're a proponent of leaning into risk. How do you lean into risk the right way and then use that to leverage it for expansion?
Yeah. Well, let's call it what it is today, everyone. Every single one of your customers is at risk. This is a tough moment that we are in. And I think it's, again, looking back, we often talk about looking at the healthy customers and expansion on the healthy customers. And what I would challenge you on there is that oftentimes customers are at risk because there is something missing, either in the time that they have to invest, in the resources that they have internally, some other blocker that is getting in the way of them making the most of whatever they have invested in with you. And what we have seen is that oftentimes our risk customers, they get put on the risk list, they're frustrated about something has gone sideways. Many times when we dig into the why, it is because right now they don't have the team to support them. They don't have the resources to make the most of it. And we may have a service or another product add-on that actually meets that goal for them and helps them out in their day-to-day job. And so we, have seen a trend of risk actually being a moment of expansion and a moment to really dig into, is there opportunity there for us to solve a real pain for this customer with something that we have available? And I will tell you, as someone who has evaluated and implemented software time and again, man, there have been moments where I thought, oh, if y'all just had a service to help me out with this thing, I would buy it right now. And that would turn me around. So don't hesitate to leverage those moments, to really ask deep questions in those moments. And you may be in a situation where for that particular risk, you don't have something. There isn't something that's going to solve that need that you have to offer. Make sure that you are taking that back to the organization, because if it's a problem now, it's going to continue to be in the future. And again, leaning into that, we are leaders, feeding back to the organization. If there are pains that you are hearing that we don't have something to fill that need, that's a great moment to say, all right, I got to take this back to the business and let's think about if it's a fit for us.
Yeah, every relationship has bumps. So why not leverage a bump to help somebody fix what they need to fix? And then, once you've done that, you created a deeper level of trust, and that's when you can ask for things. So that's, I really love that. Jackie, I know one thing that you've talked about a couple of times now is, and I think that Taylor's mentioned it too, is working with your AE team. And I think a lot of go-to-market orgs struggle with that AE CSM collaboration, but your team has bi-weekly one-on-ones with those roles. Like, what happens in those meetings? Why are they valuable? Like, give me a cool story of something that happened out of those types of meetings. Cause I've heard of those, but I've also almost always heard that they're a waste of time.
Yeah. I mean, quite frankly, they could have been a waste of time. I think, again, where we are in the economy, where expansions are the way that we're driving the most revenue, they're more important than ever. So I think the here and now makes them more valuable. There's a couple of things that the team, they're quick. They're like 15-minute syncs, by the way. These are not they're not meant to take up the calendar, but their goals are really two or three things, depending on the CSM. One, looking at open expansion opportunities that they both co-own and reviewing like the roles and responsibilities. And two, looking at the accounts they co-own and who's multi-threading on with whom. And are we waiting on any sort of answers? And can there be help on either end in terms of getting somebody on the phone? And so those are the two main ones. And then for those working on pilots, it's again, aligning on the roles and responsibilities to drive that pilot forward. So they're quick meetings. They're not supposed to be, long. It's one, and it's also really important just to build that relationship. So just to give everyone a little bit of background, at Speckit, we kind of reorged the CS team to be full cycle, meaning one point of contact post sales back in December. And then we also brought on an SVP of sales in January. So kind of two very new teams this year. And in Q1, we were both really focused on rebuilding what our teams mean. And then what we've been doing in the last 2 quarters is focus on the team combination and in building a true go-to-market team. And I think there has been historically a lot of distrust between the two teams. And so while they're very tactical meetings in terms of looking at those opportunities, looking at multi-threading and kind of the org structure of the accounts, it's also meant to just build that trust back up and build that working relationship, and work with counterparts you don't normally get to work in, like our weekly CS team meetings.
Gotcha. Awesome. Taylor, I know that you think that expansion starts with that initial sales cycle. Like, how do you work with sales to make sure they're finding out the right things to help your team be successful? What kind of skills are you giving your team to be a little more commercially minded too?
Yeah. The work that a new business sales team has to go through to bring on a customer is immense. And the amount that's required in the buying cycles these days is immense. And so there is a lot of information, great information is generated in those early days. But a quick learning that we can take now is, and I'm just think at the front, is what's working and what's resonating and what's not. Because I'm telling you that the way that those teams are approaching it and what's working for them is also going to help you as you think about arming your team to be in a position to ask the right questions, do discovery, think about expansion in the right way. So again, don't do this on your own. Go learn from your sales partners about what's working in the market right now. Making the team more commercial, I think a lot of it is arming them with a few basic skills around discovery and understanding the questions they need to be asking their customers. We are not salespeople. I have a teammate who said this perfectly. We are on a fact-finding mission with our customers. We are doing discovery all the time. And so work, with your sales counterparts to say, what are those discovery questions that you leverage? What are maybe some of those frameworks that you have that work well for you now? Pick out 3 to 5 of those questions and start practicing those with your team. Have your leaders practice those with CSMs in one-on-ones. Yes, it's always a little bit uncomfortable, but that's okay. No fun if you're not being a little bit uncomfortable. So think about what are some discovery questions that you can really help build that muscle with your frontline team. And then I'd say, let's say we get to the point where, great, the CSM knows the questions they need to ask. They hear that opportunity in the moment with their customer. They pass it along to their teammate, whether that's an account executive or an account manager. Now, follow the lead. Make sure that your team is keeping eyes on that. Make sure that they are thinking about, is this getting qualified? Is this moving down the pipeline? And you can do that, of course, with incentives, but with, whatever platform you may be using or internal alerting system, build some plays around reminding that CSM to follow up on that lead with that account manager and make sure they understand where it's going. This, of course, is all wrapped into then showing the results. Make sure your team can see the reporting. Make sure they can see the pipeline being generated. Make sure you're celebrating the leads being passed and what's happening with the conversations that they're having. So a lot there, but I think it's just building that kind of similar motion that works for other teams. Let's do it ourselves. Teams respond well to these kinds of things.
Yeah. So to me, what we kind of start to bleed over into a little bit is like, how commercially minded do we need to make CS? Do we need to teach them different skills? Do we need to make sure that they align on different OKRs or KPIs? Do we need to help them understand how to change what they usually talk about into something that the business might need more of right now? Jackie, how are you thinking about how commercially minded you want your CSMs to be versus value creation minded?
That's a good question. I, as a former salesperson, I'm pretty biased to having CSMs be commercially minded. They own a book of business that they own ARR. And so I think that they should be first and foremost focused on that and keep that top of mind in terms of goals. Taylor, I really loved your point around discovery and leveraging that skill for both teams. We're currently partnered with the Practice Lab and rolled out this enablement strategy for the entire summer for both go-to-market teams, are strictly around discovery. And I think that's a skill that both teams always can level up on in terms of understanding risk, understanding metrics, understanding what people really care about, understanding org structure. That plays into CS and that plays into sales. And then in terms of commercially minded, I mean, we constantly have to be thinking about the renewal in my mind. And I asked the team in terms of forecasting to ask themselves if the customer had to renew tomorrow, would they? And if you are unsure of that answer, the forecast is likely churn. And Taylor, to your earlier point, everyone's kind of a churn risk these days. And so knowing that it is a likely churn scenario, a couple of things. You do want to be value minded to your question, Mark, and drive value in terms of strategy. But you also need to keep in mind, when are budgets being discussed? They're being discussed earlier and earlier than I've seen previously. So we have customers who have renewals in October 2024, and they're asking about the contracts now. And so we, as CSMs, need to anticipate longer buying processes and these decisions being made now. So I think it's a balance. I think that people have to really be focused on when their renewals are, understanding, the procurement process more than ever, while balancing driving value. So that's an easier discussion, hopefully, in the long run.
Taylor, how are you thinking about that kind of stuff? How are you helping your CSMs be more commercially minded?
Yeah. You made a point, Mark, of commercially minded versus value oriented, and I think we got to dismantle that binary side by side. It's both. Value is core to everything we have to do, and it is part of the commercial equation. So when I think about our team and where they're spending time, something that we created last year as we were really starting to dip our toe into, okay, how do we start to solve some of this expansion equation, is thinking about a value calculator or an ROI calculator or something to show value from both the services and products that a customer already has and also things that they do not have. So it had, roots in the discussion around the whole company offerings. And I know some of this can sound scary and like ROI calculators, maybe that's, overdone at this point, but I will tell you, if you can put some numbers towards both how they're using us today and areas where they're not using us, that again could be valuable and helpful to them, that is an easy conversation that is value led without having to be, sales minded. It is educational more so than it is anything else. And so I'd say little mechanisms like that, thinking about some sort of way to show ROI in dollars or time savings, whatever works for you, is a nice mechanism to start moving the CSMs in that direction, to be able to ask good questions, to be able to show good value without it having to feel too commercially in the moment with the customer.
I know this, if I have a plumber in my house and I ask him to do electrical work, he's going to look at me weird. And when I ask a CSM whose job it is to drive value, to go have a very aggressive, nuanced commercial conversation, I feel like I get the same look. And I think that that's fair, just like it's fair with the plumber, right? And so I think that we really need to be aware that if we're going to go after, CSMs for making sure that they're guiding more of the commercial conversation, then we really need to make sure that we've given them the training and the enablement and the empowerment and understanding how to go do that. I think is just thinking that they can do it because they're a CSM doesn't make sense. Good question from Angelica here. I'll pass it to you first, Jack. Do you have a process that you repeat to uncover new leading indicators of revenue growth?
Yeah, so I would say the onboarding process where we have been asking about other teams prior to launch is like 8 out of 10 times been successful for us. So we definitely leverage those moments of momentum for expansion opportunity. We are looking at health scores at our healthiest customers and looking at how many licenses they have compared to their size of business, and leveraging our partnerships with our AEs to do that outreach and multi-threading to other teams to expand the usage. And Taylor, to your point, we're leaning on data and ROI metrics to tell that story to other leaders internally at those very healthy businesses. I think those are the two leading indicators that are the most repeatable at the moment.
Similar. Yeah. White space analysis, of course, making sure you understand where there is, where there are blank spots and opportunities within each of your accounts. And then another leading indicator is, have we had that conversation? Have we had that value discussion? Have we had that business review in the last 6 months? If the answer is no, I mean, once you really get into the flow of this, you will start to see that every single business review generates at least one lead. So a leading indicator of potential growth opportunities is, if we haven't had that discussion in 6 months, we are probably leaving something on the table.
And I think what I'm finding when I'm having conversations with post-sales leaders all the time and have a ton of CRO relationships is that oftentimes finding the new is the enemy of just doing the basics. And so many people are so far away from doing well on the basics that they don't need to really consider the new. And I don't know if that's your situation yet, Angelica, or not, but like in the vast majority of conversations I've had with people to help out this, I've just found out that like most of the time the CSMs are saying, the customer isn't healthy, so we can't do expansion. And it doesn't matter what signal there is if that's kind of the barrier you're always trying to break through. So
that's well said, Mark. One thing I'll add there, an example of going back to basics is no doubt all of your product teams are working on great improvements to your software. And is there a module or a part of the platform that has been revamped or improved? If so, go back and find all those customers that had an opportunity to purchase that module that were closed lost. They expressed some sort of an interest in that. Well, guess what? Now it's better. Let's go back and find them and have that conversation again. And then the last thing I'll add, because we are talking a lot about CSMs, and so much of what I know many leaders are working on is, well, we don't have a CSM for every account. And we are thinking more at scale. So how do we do this at scale? One opportunity that you have is making sure that you're leveraging any programs that you have set up with your customers. So maybe you lead office hours, maybe do best practice webinars on a monthly basis. Are you taking advantage of those opportunities? Again, not to have a commercial conversation, but to ask discovery questions, hint, hint, use polls, get people's real-time feedback. Ask the questions about where there is interest or opportunity in your broader customer market where maybe you have a CSM on that account, but maybe you don't. There's still opportunity for a conversation there, even if there's not one person managing that account right this moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, listen, I think that there's a whole other discussion to be had on what the future of CS is. I think the major part of that discussion is what scaled or tech-led success looks like, and marrying that with like commercial conversations, I think would be an amazing type of a type of conversation. Jackie, I know that you've seen in your conversations with other people, like a lot of confusions, or people have a lot of confusion when there's they don't quite understand what their role is or how it works together with another role, and there's like a little bit of ambiguity. I know you're using swim lanes and incentives to try to drive more outcomes in a more collaborative way. Can you explain those two concepts?
Yeah. So just to clarify the question, so with AEs and CSMs, how do we know who does what? And I'll preface this with, we don't have all the answers yet, and it's an evolving process. But one of the first things I did when I took over this role was put out expectations for my team. And similarly, I collaborated with our SVP of sales who put out expectations for her team and made sure that we were both aligned on our goals and then the goals for the team. So that was like the first piece of it all. Second, we aligned compensation, because I think there's a tendency for CSMs to feel like, oh, I've done all the work and then sales just got the paycheck. And so making sure that there is, at a bare minimum, some alignment there with expansion opportunities. And then, this is a newer relationship for us that we're trying to build up. And so we've done a couple of things. One, we have a monthly go-to-market meeting where we're sharing our metrics collaboratively, and there's overlap, right? Like we're working expansion, so we're talking through our accounts together. And so we're trying to show that we're one team. And then we've also put out surveys and asked, like, where are the gaps? Because there's going to be many gaps with this AECS relationship that's fairly new. And so trying to tackle what's top of mind for the team versus what I think is top of mind. And so like the pilot piece was one of the biggest discussions. You asked, I think, actually for a success story, and originally with one of your questions around the AE to CS meeting. And, quite frankly, there was tension around the pilots, and through working with our AE and CSMs around what they would hope their expectations of their partner would be, we've really developed what those swim lanes have been. So the surveys and the feedback from the team has really been important to us. And then also these bi-weekly meetings, and again, just building up what the relationship means. And so now we have a doc of like literal, well, we use Speckit. So we have swim lanes of like, this is what the AE is responsible for. This is what the CSM is responsible for in terms of an expansion opportunity. Oftentimes that involves the CSM creating a CSQL, so a CS qualified lead, and putting that into Salesforce, and the AE then starts to work it. And if there's any sort of multi-threading, they collaborate on who's going to go after what. Mark, to your point, you can't expect a plumber to be an electrician. I don't expect a CSM to be able to negotiate a very large expansion. And so we have swim lanes in terms of what's the threshold for what like a CSM could just close and really not need an AE for versus what's going to be more involved that has multiple stages of procurement and security and, you know, different aspects of this sales process. And that's particularly when we want to make sure that AE is looped in.
So I'll leave it. Thanks for that, Jackie. Let me open up if you guys got questions, put them in the chat. We just got one from Bridget. I'll let Taylor, you or Jackie respond to this one. Are you guys using predictive analytics or data modeling to anticipate customer behavior and proactively address their needs? Or is AI in any part of your strategy so far?
It is, we're exploring it. I think, you know, like many out there looking into, you know, where and how it can be potentially beneficial for us. I'd say that right now, some of the AI, AEs, AI, it's just all blue together at this point. AI opportunities I've really seen are on the technical support side. There's some really great products out there that help us understand, get a better customer experience, get to our customers faster. But there is so much data that our customers are giving us as they come in through technical support that can and should help drive not only how we serve customers, but also things like product creation. And I'll give you an example is, are you looking at these search terms that customers are using in your knowledge base or in your community? That can be a powerhouse of information to understand how your customers, or I should say, what your customers are thinking about and what's most important to them in real time. The words that humans use and how we search things is a strong indicator for what they're actually trying to achieve. So all that to say, I'd say we're very early days on this. Of course, you know, thinking about how we better use closed data from the past, indicators of customers that have grown or shrunk with us in the past, but we're certainly early on.
Jackie, y'all do anything with a bunch of data modeling, predictive analytics or stuff?
Sorry, I think I cut out. Was that question for me?
Yeah. Any question? I was just wondering if you guys have really started to explore that heavily or not yet.
We haven't started to use AI heavily. In my previous role, we had 200 plus customers qualify for onboarding every single month. And so I could see us living in a world where we really, I mean, we had to rely on data to really segment out that population. I would say within Speckit, our model's very different and our customers need a lot of hand-holding. I don't think we're in a place right now where we can lean too much on the AI piece. We do a lot of hand-holding with our customers right now. That being said, we do need data to drive our decisions. And so we leverage Catalyst Health Score and our product usage data heavily for risk management.
Yeah. Listen, I've done a lot of exploration in this area. I've dug deep into a couple of companies that say they have products that you can just plug your data warehouse in and it's going to tell you exactly what propensity to churn or renew or expand companies have. And then as you start to really dig in, I'm finding at least there's a lot of smoke and mirrors out there. And it's just a very complex problem. I think we're just getting AI to write us decent emails. Let's just pause a second before we give it extremely complex data sets and ask it to do extremely difficult, analytical review on that data set. This is just me. I think sometimes we're overcomplicating stuff and most of the signals we have are right in front of our face, and let's get through those. And then we can work on the more advanced, well, listen, I don't have to think anymore. All I got to do is look at a spreadsheet and everything that's green is as soon as I call them, they're going to have their checkbook out and ready to write me a check. And I just don't know if that world really is ever going to exist. So I would just be really cautious about the claims of AI companies. And to me, go double down on the obvious stuff. The obvious stuff is obvious for a reason because it works. And so I would just get really good at obvious before I started to really put in. Now, I might be old guy, get off my lawn. I'm willing to accept that. But listen, I'm using ChatGPT like 20 times a day. So I think I'm doing stuff too. So another question, I'll open it up to y'all, is Hannah wants to know, when in a customer base's journey should a CS leader start to segment customers? Good question. And I'm guessing that's like by like company size or revenue size or some kind of segmentation. What do you think, Taylor? You oversaw massive customer growth at SalesLoft. Like, how did you guys tackle that problem?
I think segmentation can start from day one. And this is where I would, again, if you're very early stage, how, again, is the sales team segmenting customers and potential customers and prospects? Because if there is a way that your company is going to the market in certain segments, easy, quick win and straightforward way for you to be able to do it fast is mirror those segments, look at what they're doing and just align directly to that. I do think, having seen a customer base from very small to very, very large and complex, this is not just when, but how often during the base growth are you going to need to resegment your customer base? And the answer is a few times. So this is, I would think of this as more of segmentation is a verb and not a moment. There will be something that you will iterate on over time. But again, some easy things and to start with are, how is sales going to market in terms of segments? How are you thinking about resourcing? What do customers say that they need from you from a service input perspective? Layer those things on top of each other, and those will help give you some guiding ways to think about segmentation, and also when you need to revamp it.
Yeah. What about you, Jackie?
Well, I'll just echo what Taylor said. Having been the 7th employee at AppQs and sold the first 30 customers, Taylor, you mentioned start segmenting right away. I would agree, and piggybacking off of what sales does is how we're modeling it at Speckit too. So I would just agree with what you've said.
Yeah. Again, I don't know if it's just me or what, but like I very much resist overcomplication, and probably because early in my career I made so many things complicated, and so I think that a segmentation presents itself when there is a clear delineation in how you treat a certain subset of customers from another. And once you start to really feel that that split happen, and like, if we treat these customers this way, they don't work out, but if we treat them another way, things do work out. I think that kind of feeling and that dissonance really can help guide it. I don't know if I would put like a number on it or whatever. I know on the sales side, once I get to about $25 million, $25 million, I'm starting to be aware of needing specialized sales processes to really start to segment out and maximize the different sales motions that I do. On the CS side, I think it's just way more nuanced than that, to be honest with you. But I do feel like I can already feel at Catalyst that there's a different type of motion that we have with certain types of customers, and we're getting close to that number, and we got to figure out like what we're going to do. So question
Mark,
from Jose. Oh yeah, Jackie.
I just want to piggyback on that. I think it also just when asking about segmenting, I don't think you necessarily have to act on it right away. So I just want to clarify, like when we were at AppQ's 30 customers to start, we weren't acting on like, oh, we're going to have an enterprise AE, we're going to have an enterprise CSM, but at least being aware of the customers we were bringing in early. And then same with Speckit. We have specializations now, but I don't think you should specialize too early. As Mark said, I just think you should be aware of the segments you're bringing in and aware of the different data that you're getting from those segments. Who are the healthiest customers? What features are they using? Who's churning? Who's growing? And leveraging that data to make informed decisions down the line. But I don't think you should necessarily be segmenting out like specialties very early.
Yeah. All right. Jose asked more around service provider than to a product. What kind of KPIs or OKRs have you guys found to be more useful and impactful for keeping clients in love with your company? So how you are you seeing any kind of metric that helps you understand that people are really fans?
Yeah, so for us, our product usage data, I think I actually have a report right now that I'm about to present next week on, are our customers happy and do they love Speckit? And I'm looking at a few levers. But I think, are they using the product is one of the biggest levers. And so for us, we have a funnel. So we have the licenses purchased, then the licenses they've actually utilized. And that meaning like how many people have they invited to our platform? And then under that is how many have actually activated or actively using the product on a weekly basis. And the hope is that then they're in love with the product. But there's also various components to that. So I'm looking at NPS, I'm looking at CSAT, I'm looking at G2 reviews, amongst just like the renewal sentiment or the sentiment from the CSM as well.
Yeah, I think those are all great. Agreed. We look at certainly look at those metrics. I think what we're thinking about now is similar again to how the buying cycle has changed, the renewal cycle has changed, the people at the table involved in that discussion have changed. So I would also challenge leaders to think, how important is in love at the main day-to-day point of contact level to actually get a renewal across the line these days? Is the CFO of that company in love with you? Do you know that the executive leaders 1 or 2 levels up from your main point of contact or your users who do love the product, do they know how much that team loves the product? And so we're in a moment now where if you've got great ways to understand fandom and advocacy, case studies, all those kind of good things, now it's, are you sure that that message is getting out internally at that customer organization so that no one else who doesn't use the product has any question about whether it's a product that they should keep?
Yeah, Taylor, we've been asking the question, are your customers happy or healthy? Because a lot of our CSMs would get off a call and they'd be like, oh, our customer loves us. It was a great call. And it's like, okay, that customer, that champion is happy. They like you. But when the head of finance comes in and looks at the utilization rate of 50%, are they actually a healthy account? And so I think that's a good delineation between the two.
Yeah, it's a good way to say it.
You can go into your doctor and he can be like, your blood pressure's right, your cholesterol's good, your BMI is good, this, you're healthy. It's you can use quantitative measures to figure out health. He can't quantitatively figure out if you're happy. All he can do is, are you happy? And he has to trust your answer and look at some like nonverbal cues to see if he feels like it's true or not, or she feels like it's true or not. And honestly, like, I think measuring happiness feels like a fool's errand. It's like, ultimately, if you, let's say that you're an outreach or a sales loft and you're increasing pipeline production 2x, do you care if they love you or not? It probably doesn't matter. You're crushing their pipeline numbers. They got to have you, whether they like you or not. So just be that like crazy partner that, you just can't get rid of or whatever. So, big question here from Tony. So maybe this will be the one where we end it out. What CS activity should or should not? What activities should not be automated? Taylor, what's a couple things that you would never automate in CS?
I think the executive level engagement, that's always going to be critically important. That is one-on-one. And then moments of risk. If a customer is in trouble and they've got a tough moment ahead of them, trying to automate that kind of communication, I think would be the opposite of what we all pride ourselves on as experienced leaders. Aside from that, I think there's a lot of question marks of what works for you and what works for your business. What I would say is think about a very small subset of what are those one-on-one true meaningful activities that are going to move the needle both for your customers and for your organization. And that is where you should focus the time.
Great. Jackie, any thoughts for you? 1 or 2 that's non-negotiable, people will always do it?
Well, I'm biased to onboarding, so I feel like the first impression matters. So making sure that that's not just, depending on your business model, there's a lot of emphasis on getting the customer set up correctly, because that first impression is everything. And after that, it's really, really challenging to come back from playing from a loss. So for us, that's the project management piece of it. That's getting on calls and doing trainings right now, and doing those weekly check-ins to make sure that progress is being made. I don't think at this point, at least for Speckit, that could be automated. The other piece would be in a normal environment, I would say this piece could be automated, but for high risk renewals, that automated reminder that goes out is likely, without a conversation for accounts that are at risk, it's likely not going to bode well. So I would say making sure that you're really tactical around that outreach, again, for your high risk, high value accounts, and making sure that you're having meaningful conversations around what renewal looks like. So in a normal environment, I would say automate your renewal reminders and things like that.
Awesome, y'all. Well, hey, thanks everybody for joining. I think we're about at time. I came into this like really wanting to like Jackie because she's a customer over Taylor, because Taylor worked for SalesLoft and I work for Outreach. So I have to hate Taylor. And now it's a little more balanced than I was hoping to leave the call with. So thanks so much, you guys, for having a great, fun, and informative call.
This is great.
Awesome. We got really existential at the end. You were healthy, but are you happy? I love that. Audience, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you got some good takeaways from our speakers. Taylor, Jackie, thank you so much for all your knowledge. And Mark, you're a great moderator. And also, I love all the knowledge pieces that you put in there. Audience, the MSP team will work to send you a follow-up email with the recording and key takeaways from this session today. So watch out for an email from the MSP team. While the speaker and I will hang out backstage, we will make sure that everything that you need, audience, is available for you later today. Thanks for joining us. We have a bunch of more events later this week, so make sure to check our website. Thank you, Catalyst, for sponsoring this event. And thank you, speakers. We can go backstage, hang out there.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye,
everyone.
audience.